Welcome back to another episode of Legacy Battle. Joining me and Rollo Cawthon tonight, we are honored to have back Betty Jo Goodwin, jockey. Check out her prior show in the archives. Also, her husband's been on. Check out his prior show in the archives. Nick Goodwin. We have it's not a debate, it's more like a history lesson for you, followed by an interview tonight. Horse racing's Triple Crown. And we are joined by a retired jockey. He has nearly 4,400 career wins and over 6,000 runner-up and third-place finishes. No one will ever forget at Jockey Club, the Gold Club, the win riding Skip Away and upsetting the Great Cigar. So we have just an excellent jockey who I believe next year is going to be a Hall of Famer. So we want to welcome the great Shane Sellers. Thank you so much for coming on, Shane.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
As always, we're going to have our Q&A after, and we're going to jump in, and we're going to start with Rollo, who is representing the Preakness.
Wow.
Yeah. So the Preakness is an American horse race held every year on Armed Forces Day, which is the third Saturday in Baltimore, Maryland at Pimlico. It's a Grade 1 race run over 1 3/16 miles on dirt. It's the middle jewel of the Triple Crown, held 2 weeks after the Derby and 3 weeks before Belmont. The Preakness 150 will be celebrated as the 150th running of the Preakness this year on May 17th, 2025. A couple fun facts. Jockey Eddie Acaro has the most Preakness wins by a jockey with 6. In honor of Black History Month, 7 African-American riders have won the Preakness. Bob Baffert holds the Preakness record by a trainer with 7. His last was in 2023 with National Treasure. But only 3 women have ridden in the Preakness. One, Rosie Napravnik, who we debated on this show at one time, Andrea Seefeld, and Patricia Cooksey. Secretariat in 1973 originally was clocked at 155, but in 2012, that was changed to 153 after finding a discrepancy with various clockers. So he officially has the record as of 2012 at the Preakness, and he also has the record at the Derby and at the Belmont in that 1973 magical season. One of the best races at Preakness was at the 97 running when Silver Charm, Free House, and Captain Bodget hit the wire in a photo finish. It was one of the best races that was that year, and also all time. And it was that year in '97. It was the second most attended sport event in the entire country. Was that race, and they gave him a show.
Wow. So Shane, 96, you finished second in the Preakness. That was your best showing in the Preakness. Tell us about riding on that track. What's it like, and just the experience of being there?
Well, I rode it a few times, and I think I was second on Skip Away. Well, I know I was, but Pimlico, the Preakness has a different configuration of the racetrack and a different style of running. It's more tactical speed and is used in the Preakness, and other than the mile and a quarter and the mile and a half, so it's a different run race. You want to be tactical a little bit.
And you said your best was on Skip Away?
Yeah, Skip Away. I was second on Skip Away.
So what made him do so well on that track?
Well, he was just a good horse. Louis Couture's beat him that year, but he got an easy lead on me, and he was just a better horse than me that day. But he Skip Away, he was just a great horse. He was a really good horse. If he handled the track at Churchill, I'd have won the Derby on him, but he didn't handle it at Churchill. He didn't handle it in the Breeders' Cup Classic either when he ran it. And I didn't ride him then, but he just never liked Churchill. So, but we had the Preakness, he liked it, and just couldn't catch Louis Couture's that day.
Betty, tell us about the Belmont Stakes.
Okay, so I have the Belmont Stakes. The Belmont Stakes is an American Grade 1 stake race for 3-year-old thoroughbreds run at Belmont Park in Elmont, New York. It is run over the worldwide classic distance of 1.5 miles. Colts and geldings carry 126, and fillies will carry 121 if they try the test of champions. So it was given that name because the Belmont, the track itself has a very, very long stretch. So it's hard for horses to really kind of close down that long swooping stretch. The attendance at the Belmont Stakes is among the American Thoroughbred Racing top attended events. In 2004, the Belmont Stakes drew a television audience of 21.9 million viewers and had the highest household viewing rate since 1977 when Seattle Slew won the Triple Crown. So Justify won the 150th Belmont Stakes in 2018 to become the 13th Triple Crown champion. Just in the recent years, the Belmont has had to change venues. They did temporarily move it to New York in 2024. And then I'm pretty sure this year they're going to host New York. Saratoga is going to host the Belmont Stakes again. Another kind of tidbit about the Belmont Stakes is Jenna Antonucci was one of the first female trainers to win a jewel in the Triple Crown at Belmont with Arcangelo, who is the son of Arrowgate, and we all loved Arrowgate. And obviously, we can't forget Secretariat. So on June 9th, 1973, Secretariat won the Belmont Stakes by 31 lengths in a record time of 2 minutes and 24 seconds, becoming a Triple Crown champion, ending a 25-year gap between Citation, the Belmont and Triple Crown winner in 1948. So Secretariat's record still stands as the fastest running of the Belmont Stakes and an American record for 1.5 miles on the dirt.
This is also the oldest of the three races that we're talking about tonight, which is a pretty cool fact. But Shane, you finished third twice. Very impressive. She mentioned that back end. How are you running your horse differently based off of the length of this track? Because it is by far the longest.
Well, I was maybe I was a different rider or I tactically rode races different because just because it was 1.5 miles or a different track, I always just looked at my horse, the race my horse was in, where the speed was, who was the speed, who was not the speed, and I always rode my horse accordingly. I don't think you can go out and say you need to ride the Belmont. The Belmont is ridden this way. I don't believe that. I believe you need to ride your horse accordingly. After the break, the race is going to develop, and the speed's going to be the speed, and it's going to develop going into the first turn, and the race is ridden that way, and that would be my answer. Now, somebody can give you, it needs to be ridden this way, this way. I never rode that way. Not a regular race, not a big race, not any race. I rode my horses accordingly. So it's not a very good answer, but I rode him. I gave my horse a chance.
Excuse me. Did you notice any fatigue from the horses? This being the third race in this short time period. Like a lot of times the front runners who may be going for that Triple Crown, they can't do it because they're just out of juice. Is that something that you noticed out there?
Yeah, because I believe that we don't have horses that are bred to go 1.5 miles anymore. I mean, we breed for speed to sell. That's the way the game is now. We breed for speed to sell, and we don't have horses that are bred to go 1.5 miles. It's just who's going to stagger in.
We're going to move on to our final one of the night, and that is the Kentucky Derby, also known as the Run for the Roses. Churchill Downs, 5 million purse. I mean, that's not too shabby. That's more than I'll make in my lifetime. So there you go. To me, this is the biggest U.S. race, named in 1937 after John and Henry Churchill donated the land. The race actually started in 1875. But interesting fact, John and Henry Churchill apparently were related to one of the guys who discussed, what was it, Lewis and Clark. They're related to Lewis and Clark or something like that. But craziness. But it is a 1 1/4 mile track. Originally, it was 1.5 miles, but it's been 1 1/4 forever now. The Derby is known for its traditions, like the mint. I'm probably saying this, the mint julep. It's a special drink, and the burgoo, which is a special stew, and of course the infield and the call to the post. I mean, that's the pageantry of the Kentucky Derby is incredible. Again, Secretariat holds the record for fastest time at 1:59.4. And four horses are tied for the longest victory with 8 lengths. Now, Donnerell is still the biggest long shot to win at 91-1. You put $100 down on that, you made some money. 107 jockeys have won the race, led by Eddie Okoro and Bill Harlock, with 5, and then big names like Calvin Burrell, Gary Stevens, Bill Shoemaker, and prior guest Mike Smith. They've all won 2 or more. So, excuse me, battling that cold tonight. But no horse has won twice, and that's because the race is only open to 3-year-olds. All the races tonight are only 3-year-old races, ironically. So that is the synopsis, I guess, of the Kentucky Derby. It is a pageant every year and a spectacle. And I didn't look at the ratings, but I would assume it was probably the most watched race. Shane, just tell me about just being there and having the opportunity to be on that track and to run just the most significant race in the world, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I was fortunate. I rode 14 consecutive derbies, and I rode 99-1 shots, and I rode 3 or 4 favorites, and unfortunately I never was able to win it. But it's the race that everybody is in the game for, or you want to win the Kentucky Derby. Well, let me take that back. Riders, you want to ride the Kentucky Derby, then you want to win it. If you just ride it, it's great. And I was fortunate enough to ride 14 of them, and I believe in my heart that I had my best chance was Pulpit. Um, he was a very good horse, probably the most talented horse I ever sat on, and he won the Bluegrass, and we came into the Derby the favorite, and he was in front, and I just knew on the backside I had won my first Derby. I mean, I had beat all the horses in the back of me, and the pace was right for me, and I just knew. I could see the cameras on the lines coming next to me, and it was just. And he went in the turn, and he kind of took a bit of a bad step. Not bad, not he didn't break down, but he took a little bit of a bad step, and he didn't hit his next gear that he usually has, and ended up finished fourth. But if that didn't happen, I know I was on the best horse that day.
Was that 96?
It was 90. Oh my God, it was 96 or 97.
Okay,
I think Skip Away was 97, and I get them confused, but I think it was 96. Yes, I do. Yeah.
excellent. Well, nice job, guys. Let's move into a Q&A here. Betty, go ahead, and then Rollo me.
Yeah, so a question that I have is when you were kind of coming up in the jockstrom with your bug, who was in there mentoring you, or who are you looking up to when you first started riding? Because you grew up with like great, you're a great rider yourself, but you grew up with some great, fantastic riders.
Well, I did, but I grew up in Louisiana. I rode my first race when I was 11 years old, 12 years old, on the match tracks in Louisiana. But I went on to ride at Delta Downs, and event. I went to the smaller tracks, smaller tier racetracks, and that's what I learned. And they didn't have big name riders there, but I had riders that I learned. But I had already learned my trade. Me and Calvin Borel started together at 12 years old in the match track. So by the time we were 16 years old, we had a seat on a horse. We knew how to get out the gates. We knew how to switch sticks. We knew how to do everything. So, but I stayed there a couple of years. I learned all I could learn from there, and then I went on to Fairmont Park, and I learned all I could learn. I kept going up and up and up until I got to the top of tier of racetracks, and then I was able to ride with Pat Day and Randy Romero. He was my hero. We're from the same hometown, a little town called Erath, Louisiana. We're from 2,000 people, and But he was my hero, and Pat Day, these guys that I rode with day in and died, Jerry Bailey and Mike Smith and Angel Cordero. I mean, I think I rode in the best era of racing of riders. I really do. I believe that the era I rode in was probably, in my opinion, the best era of riders.
Agreed.
Shane,
And you
go
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I just to kind of, go in another direction off that question. Do you have like any advice for, say, a young rider in this generation? Like, what do they need to do to even come close to, the years that you guys are riding, all those great riders? What do you think they should do moving into a riding career?
Boy, I hate to be negative, but there's just not a lot of riders coming up anymore. Riders can't do the weight, and I fought this battle. I fought this fight 20 years ago, and I told them this was going to happen. And I, it's probably one of the reasons why I'm not getting inducted to the Hall of Fame, and they're fighting for me right now because of the fights I fought. And I told them this 20 years ago. These kids, and there's nothing wrong with girl riders. You're one, but there's more girl riders today than there's ever been. It's more girl riders coming. You don't see many young men coming up to ride. If they do, they come in from third world countries, to try to make the weight. But so it's hard to give advice. I do give advice as much as I can. I love this group of riders. Today's riders, they're a different style of riders, I believe. I think they're not as patient riders with the riders I rode with. I think they're a little more precocious. That doesn't mean the riders is that it's right or wrong, but it's a different style of riding. And but to answer your question, what advice I would give is look up to your older riders, because there's no more journeymen in the riding room anymore. Johnny Velasquez is fixing to go out. So the next ones that take the place is the Ortiz brothers, and I love them both, and Flavian Pratt and Tyler Gaffleone and these guys, and watch these guys. But I think these kids come in today and they think they know it all, and they really don't, and it's showing out on the racetrack, in my opinion. I'm not being negative. I'm trying not to be, but it shows out on the racetrack, and I don't think kids are trying. When I was coming up, I'd look at film, I'd watch races, I'd watch the older guys that came before me. I learned from every guy. I didn't watch one rider, I watched all riders. I took a little bit from this guy, took a little bit from that guy. And and that's what I think riders need to do. They need to pull up films. Watch Jerry Bailey. Watch how he switched sticks. Watch Pat Day. Watch how he set chili. And I think they don't do that enough.
Rollo, take two.
Shane, let's pivot a little bit. Let's talk about your country album,
Oh my God.
Mark Blue. So
Martin.
what was the inspiration for that, and do you still perform today?
Okay. All right. You have time for this or what? Yeah. I'll tell you what happened, man. Me and myself, Mike Smith, and my agent Ronnie Banks. Ronnie came home one day in Gulfstream, and he said we went out to eat. Me and Mike and Ronnie, and Ronnie said, "Man, I went to a place last night, man, and you go up there and you put your song up and you pick a song out of a book and the words come up and they call it karaoke." That was about 30 years ago. I said, "Man, that sounds fun." He said, "Man, I had a blast. I sang all night long." I said, "God." Mike said, "Man, let's do that." So we got to find one of the nice hotels that we used to go out and we put the karaoke. Well, we started karaoke, and that's what we do every Todd Pletcher. We were 30 years ago. We were all young kids, and Mark Hanning and Dallas Stewart, and we'd all go out and karaoke. So anyway, after years of karaoke, and one of my friends, I blew my knee out, and when I blew my knee out, I was off for 2 years. And my buddy, he heard me karaoke one night, and he was a songwriter from Nashville, and he had written some hits. He said, "Won't you?" He called me T-Boy. He was from Louisiana, He said, "T-Boy, won't you come why don't you come to Nashville and get in the studio and go through my catalog and let's pick a song and go see what you sound like. And I said, that'd be fun. And so we went, and he said, that's not bad. That's not bad, man. You sound pretty good. So he told me, we're gonna pay this guy. He's gonna write some music for you. I said, okay. So I wrote some music and come up with a song called Matthew, Mark, Luke, and Earnhardt. So he had me come demo it. So I demoed it, and we got in the car, and we was driving to see a band, a local guy, and there was three of us in the back, and then one guy was Daryl Singletary, and he was a famous country music singer, and he was in the car, and we got in, and we were driving. He said, "T-Boy, put that CD in there of your song. Let Daryl hear it." And I was like, I was embarrassed, I was like, "Oh, come on, man. This guy got some number 1 hits, man." So he said, "Oh, Shane, it ain't bad, man. It ain't bad. It's good." So we went in the place, and um, we were watching these guys, and these waitresses coming around, and everybody started talking, and the crowd got quiet, and I was like, "What's going on, man? What's going on?" And I asked the lady, I said, "What's going on?" She said, "Didn't you hear Dale Earnhardt just got killed?" And I said, and I got the song called Matthew, Mark, Luke, and Earnhardt, man, that we just finished listening to in the car, and I was like, "Oh my God." So we got over the shock of Dale Earnhardt getting killed, and we went on and partied, and we got back in the car, and Daryl Singletary said, "Hey, T-Boy, put that CD back in." So we put it back in, and it was Matthew, Mark, Luke, and Earnhardt. So I got back to Nashville. By the time I got to Nashville, DreamWorks Records signed me to a record deal, and that's how I got my record deal. So I was never supposed to be a country music singer.
You charted, so there you go.
I did, yeah, I did.
And you've ridden a lot of horses in your time as a jockey.
Yeah.
Who would you put as your personal for Mount Rushmore of horses that you've ridden?
The four?
Yeah.
Oh, that's easy. Skip Away, Pulpit, um, Bugs Boy, and Countess Diana.
Nice. So one that you didn't mention, I wanted to ask you about. You rode a pretty well-known white stallion named Black Tie Affair.
I did.
Very famous horse. What was it like to ride him, and what made him so special?
I rode him one time, and Pat Day took off of him to ride Summer Squall in the Washington Park Handicap at Arlington Park, and I was leading rider, and they put me on him. He was an easy horse to ride. He would just go to the front, and you dropped your reins on him, and he was just a front runner, you just had to wait, and they couldn't catch him, and um, so again, Pat Day took off him to ride Summer Squall, and I beat Summer Squall that day with him in the Washington Park Handicap, and they took me off of him, and they put Jerry Bailey on him, and he ended up winning the Classic. So it was kind of a bittersweet, deal. I just rode him the one time, and I believe if I'd have rode him the next time, I'd have won on him too. So it was a little hard pill to swallow there.
When you mentioned handicap, that's perfect because my next question, you were very successful in handicap races. Horses 3 years and up, of course, for anyone who's, not familiar with that. To what do you attribute the success, and how do the older horses hold up at those ages as they get older, like 4 and 5 years old?
Well, we don't have any 4 and 5 year olds anymore. I mean, if you look at the races, might have a 4 year old, but it's very seldom you see a good horse 4 or 5 years old. They just don't last anymore. We breed for speed to sell, and they just don't last anymore for some reason. So, if you look at the handicap race, I mean, if you look at the older horse races, I mean, it's allowance horses. It's not like it used to be. You got all these big name horses in there. Um, so, and as far as for my success, it was just the horses. I mean, the only thing separates a great rider from a good rider is a good horse. You know, Horses makes us all. I can't. When I rode, I won 4,400 or close to 4,400 races, but I didn't do it because of Shane Sellers. I did it because I was riding no less than five. I might ride 10 a day and ride no less than 5 to 1 shot. I mean, you got to win races. And if I, you can't win on a horse that can't win. So I guess my answer to that question is horses. Horses was my success, made me successful.
Betty, did you have one more?
I just was Buck's Boy. I was 10 years old when Buck's Boy came to Woodbine and ran in the Hong Kong Jockey Club. And I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about him when you rode him, because my mom actually paddocked him for that race when I was a little kid.
Really?
Yeah, I am in the win picture, but he was just big and stocky to me. I was young, so I just remember he was stunning to look at. So could you tell us about him, Buck's Boy?
Well, you must have been really little
I
because
was little.
he was a little horse.
Yeah, I was
He
little. I'm
he, he
tiny.
yeah, the Bucks boy he was the first Illinois bred to win a Breeders' Cup, and he was a little bitty horse, and it was uncommon for a little bitty horse to go a mile and a half. He was a mile and a half specialist and a speed horse. I won the Breeders' Cup on him, wire to wire. I think he might have been the only Breeders' Cup winner to go wire to wire, going a mile and a half. And but I didn't ride him in Canada, Japan, whatever the race he said. I didn't ride him there,
Mhm.
but I did ride him in the British Cup, and he was just the easiest horse to ride. He speed himself to the lead, and as soon as you made the lead, he would drop the reins. You just had to drop the reins. He'd throw his ears forward, and if they came to his hip, he'd pick it up a little bit. If they wouldn't, he'd back up. He'd back. It was the easiest race that I ever won, and the biggest race I ever won, because he was just that easy to ride. He was a speed horse, and what a good horse he was. He was a great grass horse. He was champion. He was a champion.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Finish us out, Rollo.
So Shane, since your retirement, you've been a big advocate for better pay for riders, insurance, things of that for the riders of today. You're retired. Why do you go so hard for the younger generation? And when you've already lived your career.
Well, I think you have it a little backwards. I fought when I was riding. That's when I fought, and I shouldn't have. Well, no, I take that back. I take that back because I don't regret the changes that I made, but I fought a lot of fights for riders, and it was because the riders before me made the game better for me. And I wanted to leave the game a better place than when I came into it for the riders neck. So, I fought for the weights. I did a documentary called Jockey that won an Emmy, but I had to expose the game of horse racing to change the game, to change the weights. I fought for the endorsements, for riders to have endorsements, and that was 30 years ago. Now you know, they wear endorsements, get paid a lot of money for it. And I fought for insurance. We used to have just $100,000 on track policy, and I got it to $1 million policy. But all three of those, I wish I'd have fought them when I quit, because it cost me my business, and it cost me the Hall of Fame, and that's why Chris McCarron and other guys are fighting to get me into the Hall of Fame, because my numbers are there, but they won't put me in because of I stepped on too many toes. And so you had it a little bit backwards. I didn't fight after, I fought before, and it it really hurt my career. It really hurt my career, but I'm proud of it. When I see a jock come out the jock's room and he's got something on his pants, I know I did that. They ride at 117, 118 now. They used to ride at 13. I know I did that. And now if they fall, they don't have to worry about just having 100,000. If they paraplegics, they got $1 million, and I'm proud of that too.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Shane, for sharing all that with us. Appreciate your time.
No problem, man. Thank you for having me.
I remind everybody, hit that like, subscribe, notification button. And we want to thank Betty Jo for coming back on as well. Everyone have a great night. We'll see y'all next time.